You ready?
There is a connection between the paranormal, UFOs, and the myths of ancient history. The clues are scattered across the landscape from a forbidden past, maybe even in your own backyard. There is a connection between the true nature of our reality, consciousness, and the unexplained. I'm Carl the Crusher. Let's explore the unknown. Welcome back to the Carl Crusher channel. I have an awesome interview lined up today from the Re-Indigenizing Minds project, the new Patreon page that has been created to do exclusive workshops and classes and to teach you a lot of amazing secrets in Native American history, and also a lot of the clues to the ancient petroglyphs and artifacts and civilization that spans back thousands of years into ancient indigenous cultures in America and down in South America and across the globe. And it's a fascinating system that is being developed by Colleen Gorman and working with Roger Colty. And they have this awesome project and everything set up. And I have our special guest today, Colleen Gorman from that Re-Indigenizing Minds project. How are you doing today, Colleen?
Hello, I'm doing good. Thank you.
You're in your fancy classroom, so you just got like a new career path going for you and everything. So where are you and what are you doing now?
I am working for Albuquerque Public Schools as the Navajo Language Practicum Coordinator, and also I am a Navajo language instructor at the Career Enrichment Center. So I am teaching Navajo to high school students who get bused in all over the city from different high schools. So that's basically what I'm doing as a teacher, spending most of my days working on teaching high school kids Navajo language.
That's amazing. So they bus them in, they gather up the kids and bring them in, and you get to teach classes and help them learn Navajo. Navajo, that's like famous and known for being one of the most difficult languages. Is this something that you've had to learn growing up through your life, or is it something you've always known?
It's something I've learned growing up. And you know what? I should probably give my introduction in Navajo. I just kind of jumped the gun. Sorry.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Nervous. So as Navajo people, we always introduce ourselves to establish our relationship with each other. And that is also the purpose of our language, going back into ancient times. We were told at one point that our language was going to be taken away from us by the holy people. And so 4 times we went back and asked them to keep our language. But the 4th time, when we told them that we would establish and keep a relationship and use our language to keep that relationship with the land and the plants and the animals, and that we would use it to communicate with them and to help them out, but also to ask them for help as well. That is why the Navajo language was allowed to be continued through the Diné people, Diné meaning Navajo. So my introduction is Navajo. This is how I do it. Ya at she'eya Colleen Gorman da shijine, nanisht ejet hachitni in shlo, bink betwodni twitch eatni, bashichin, kimsachitni da shiche, do de besijin da shinale, chinli de na sha, she'as chine da holondo, hachitni Gorman nadin doba on, din benachai, Ando Shiaj Philip Bailey do Nadine Benachai do Shiaj Ashkiyeje Salvador Barros will yet Nahast Benachai Ado Shichone Carlos Barros will yet Albuquerque Kehashtik and Chinli de Nasha Akut Ego San Shlom. So this is who I am as a Navajo woman. My name's Colleen Gorman. I'm originally from Chinle, Arizona. I'm a teacher and a student. at the University of New Mexico, and I have 3 children, and age 24, 20, and 9. They are Kachitni Gorman, Philip Bailey, and Salvador Barros. So this is who I am as a Navajo woman. I'm living in Albuquerque, and that's what I do.
That was absolutely beautiful. What an amazing language. I think that American English sounds so clunky and almost like the Swedish chef off the Muppets show or something. But the Navajo language is so beautiful. I really admire that. That was really, really amazing. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, my students are already singing. I'm working with Mr. Williams, his Native American leadership class. Tomorrow we're going to have a fry bread sale. So that's kind of exciting. The kids are taking the lead. We're just giving it all to them to really take the lead and making that happen. I'm teaching them the ingredients in Navajo, how to count, how to do handling verbs, such as, give this to me. There's different ways to say that in Navajo, depending on what type of object that you're using. And so it's really great to work with children, to work with the high school students, and to give their culture and their language back to them. For some of the students, this is their first time actually engaging with the language. Some of the other students, the grandparents are fluent, but their parents are maybe partially fluent or understand more than they speak. And I would say that would be the case for me as well, just because I went to boarding school when I was 4 years old. And that was an Indian boarding school, and we spoke English there. My parents tried to speak to us in English so that we would do well at school. They wanted us to do well in, I guess, in the white man's world, as they would say back in the day. I don't know if that's politically correct anymore.
Right.
Everything's changed. And so that boarding school era, that continued. I'm in my 40s now. And so I started boarding school at age 4. Before I went to boarding school, I did go to a Navajo language immersion daycare. And I also spent summers at my grandmother's. So she did not speak a word of English. I think I heard her say trash one time, and that was it. She understood it. I remember asking my mom, "Where's my glasses?" And in Navajo, she responded, "They're on the shelf over there behind the thing." So she understood it, and she lived to be 104. I took care of her for a little while. My sister Cordelia took care of her for a lot longer, for about 8 or 9 years. So she just recently passed away in 2018 at the age of 104.
Wow.
So a lot of the elderly Navajo, they live to be in their hundreds, their late 90s. 104 is the goal, and that's even living that long is even tied into the structure of the Hogan. So the east represents birth, infancy, new life, and then as you go around to the south in a clockwise direction, which is the same manner as the sun and its path around, you have young, like your early childhood when you're learning, and then to the east you have middle age. So, the back part of the Hogan would be like, I guess when you get to that would be like about 52 years old.
Oh.
And then as you continue around, you would get older. And then when you come back to the door, that actually represents 104 years.
I did not know that.
Yes, so it's built into that, and part of the reason that we also have our puberty ceremony, not only for the females, but also males have a 2-day one that incorporates the sweat lodge. The young ladies have a puberty ceremony called the kinalta, and that incorporates making cake in the ground using traditional foods. So when that offering is made and those ceremonies and prayers and songs are made, that's an offering that's made to the sun bearer, and that's with the hopes that you will actually live a long life, that you will live to be 104. So that's part of our traditional practices. We're trying to live a long life. So I hope I live to be that old.
That's fascinating.
I guess it's hard when you get old. I'm starting to feel old these days, but I know I'm just a baby probably.
So did you grow up as a child with a lot of that? I know that there's different like initiations and ceremonies and things that you learn being a boy or a girl growing up based on your traditions. I'm kind of curious what your childhood was like, because you came into this all right, a little bit after Rogers' era, obviously, where he was dealing with not only the boarding schools, but all of the adoption programs and a lot of that integration stuff that was going on at the time. But the boarding school stuff is very interesting. And the kind of the paradox of trying to be integrated into the white society, but also maintaining your cultural upbringing and your language and your beliefs and everything like that. I'm really fascinated with that and how what a challenge that is, and how you've been able to not only preserve that, but also working with Roger, take it to a whole other level to where now you're teaching it and turning the tables completely the other way, and restoring all this and re-indigenizing it. So I think that a lot of that might come from your upbringing, really setting that stage. So I'm curious about how that all that played out for you as a child.
I think I was really lucky because my family was really big, and my mom was really instrumental in helping to continue the culture. She really involved our families in ceremonies. So I actually was raised with the Catholic Church, but I also grew up attending Native American church ceremonies, which is most people, I guess they might call it the peyote meetings. So that would be held in a teepee, or that would be held in a hogan, and there would be a fireplace, and so I grew up with that. But I also grew up with traditional Navajo ceremonies. Some people have labeled that as a pan-Indian religion. And what happened was Quanah Parker, who was Comanche, one of the last roaming Comanches in the plains during the reservation era, when they were bringing people and forcing them to stay on the reservation, and they were not allowed to leave unless they got permission from the BIA agent of that reservation. So he was still roaming the plains, and when he went down to Mexico, he got hurt, and a curandera healed him with a peyote plant and the sister plant, which I can't remember right now the name of that. And he learned those songs and prayers, and then he brought them back. And he brought them back to the Oklahoma area. And then from there, it spread, and it went all the way north, all the way up to Canada. And then it came back down, and then it came back to Navajos through Arapaho country. And so Roger said in one of the interviews that you did that they actually, when peyote finally came home, he was there at that ceremony where it came back to the Mexican border, and the Tohono O'odham and the Yaqui, I believe they had a ceremony there, and that was either in the 60s or the 70s. I don't quite recall, but he said that he was there when peyote finally came home. And so each tribe has adapted it and runs the ceremony slightly differently. So like how a Navajo roadman will run the peyote ceremony is completely different than how someone who's in South Dakota, who is Lakota, might run the ceremony. Because I recall, I think, sometimes they do wakes, and so they'll bring people in who have passed into the ceremony, but Navajos will not do that. So it's run completely differently. So it's adaptable. For some people, it's all about Jesus Christ and praying to God. For other people, it has nothing to do with Christianity, and it has to do with their prayers to the ancient gods or deities that they have prayed to for, that we have prayed to for all time. So that's the Native American church ceremony. And the traditional Navajo ceremonies, those are ceremonies based on Sa'ahmarai Bik'ehujon, and that is called, most people just call that the beauty way. That's a quick, rough translation. It's the path to old age with happiness emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And there's a whole philosophy that goes into that. So you could exercise and use that every day. You could use it for your whole life. You could use it for planning for projects, and that incorporates ntakes do nahata do ina do Sihasin. So Nsaike is being thinking and thought associated with the east. So that's when you set your prayers and you think or meditate about the day and what you want for your day. And then Nahata is to the south, and that's planning and preparation associated with early childhood and young adulthood. So you're getting your education, you're planning what you want to do. And then Ina is associated with the west. Ina means living or life. And so that's when you're like in your middle ages and you're executing all the things that you prayed about, you thought about, and are manifesting. And then Sihasin is old age and happiness. So that's associated with the north, with nighttime, winter, darkness. And that's why we have our ceremonies at night, because we can't look out and be distracted by other things going on in the world. We're actually looking in and we're reflecting. And so that's a daily process, that's a life process. And if you want to apply it to a project, let's say a public speech or something, the east would be like the brainstorming part. The south would be the Nahata planning part, would be like bullet pointing what you're, organizing and putting on paper what you want to say. And then to the west would be like when you present and you give your speech. And then to the north would be reflecting on what could I have done better? Reflecting on how you might have carried that out, and then starting over again. So it's a cycle. And so that's how you use that. So I learned that throughout my life, but also when I attended Diné College. I have an associate's degree in Navajo history and Indian studies. And at Diné College, they have some really amazing instructors like Avery Denny, Harry Walters, Wilson Aronlith was there. I don't think he's there anymore. He might be. And so some of these teachers at Diné College, they'll teach foundations of Navajo culture, Navajo philosophy, Navajo holistic healing, and they'll break down the structure of prayers and they'll explain it in Navajo, and then they will send you out to go to a ceremony to practice what you learned. And so that's what I started doing. And being able to go into a ceremony and sing and things of that nature. One of the reasons why I was able to have the confidence to do that was because, one, I was learning Navajo and getting better at it, because that's a lifelong path, is learning Navajo. Everyone's at different levels of fluency. And I also used to sing with the powwow group, Pawnee Yellow Horse. So when I was up at Denver going to the College of Engineering at the University of Colorado Boulder, I met up with the Echo Hawk family, and they brought me into their drum group called Pawnee Yellow Horse, which was led by Vance Horse Chief. So I learned a lot of Pawnee songs. I loved Kiowa Gore Dance songs, so I learned a lot of those. And we would travel the country and we would sing at different powwows. The Gore Dance songs, if you go to a powwow, that happens before the powwow. So that could be an hour session, or it could be 3 or 4 hour session of singing. And it feels really good to be around the drum to sing that. And so you learn songs from people, you pick up songs, you share songs, and you learn other languages, and you meet people on the powwow trail. So it's really a neat space. And so I got very comfortable with singing songs and listening and hearing and picking up on them and learn. And you have to hear it one time and then you got to start singing it. So I got comfortable with that. So when I came home to Diné College, that helped me to have the confidence to be able to go into ceremonies and to just try. It's all you can do. That's what they say in Navajo, is it's up to you. No one else is going to do it for you. You have to take the initiative. And so I teach that to the kids here too. That's one of the main lessons that I teach, or try to remind them at least once a week, because no one else is going to save our culture for us. We have to live it. We have to live by it. We have to do it. We have to speak our own language to continue it. And no one else is going to do it for us. And so part of that is also having a paradigm shift, which is why I really appreciate what Roger has to say and the knowledge that I've learned from him. because growing up in boarding school from age 4 until age 10, I actually was ashamed of myself, of my accent, of kind of, I guess, not, I don't know, just who I was at that time. And maybe it was because of the internalized racism or assimilation. Like I didn't feel good enough. And I think everyone has that issue though. You know, when you're growing up, you know, you do feel good about yourself for different things, but when you hit puberty, you know, you're a teenager, you don't, you know, you have those self-confidence issues. And when I went to high school, I went to high school in the East Coast. I was a total nerd, so I got a full ride scholarship, and I was completely out of place. I went to St. George School in Newport, Rhode Island, and I think I was only one of two Native American students when I started attending the high school there. And you know, no one ever expressed interest in me. I didn't even think I was beautiful until I got to college, you know, and someone, you know, then I had my first love and all that, you know. But then you go, I'm not going to go down that hole.
You don't want to talk about
that
your college
story.
romantic life, Colleen?
What
No?
was that?
You don't want to talk about your college romantic days, Colleen? No?
No, not at all. Let's just say that I have a beautiful child, Kachitni Gorman. I had him at the age of 24, and I was a single mom. And so I've tried to do my best as a single mom. And when I met Carlos Barros, he really helped me as a parent because I'm an artist, I'm a poet, you know, I'm kind of all over the place. And in some ways, he was able to hold on to the string of my balloon head to say, all right, let's try and be more, let's be more steady and have a routine for the kids. And that's what kids need. They need that for stability. And so he's helped me a lot with that in raising our kids together. So that stability has also allowed me to be able to work as a muralist with the city of Albuquerque and also with Nativo Lodge, but also with Roger in putting some of our research together and putting some workshops together and devoting some of that time. So enough about me. I'm actually more interested in sharing some of the information about the sacred calendars.
Yeah, I would love to get into that because even as you were talking and introducing yourself and your whole background, I can't help but notice like the connection between the spoken word and the Navajo language and how you say things immediately is integrated and connected all the way in and all the way out to everything that you're seeing in the sky and the stars and in nature, to internal subconscious symbolism and how you're supposed to align your soul with those systems and cosmic rotations, and all the way down to the way that you say words in the Navajo language and what it means ties into the circles and that rotation motif and this whole idea of calendar systems and being in that flow with all of that universally and being in harmony, and how you go and share those experiences through the language, through music, and through song and dance, and through your emotions and those the frequency and the vibrations. And I think it's amazing that just now it's like quantum physicists and modern scientists are just now catching up to the things that you were kind of doing since you were a child and since Roger was doing as a child, just in your customs and the way that you were brought up. To me that's so important that we get back in touch with that, especially as a society, and that we can all heal together by learning those things, because it's the way that the universe actually works and the way that it makes us who we are and what we are. So I would love to get into talking about the calendar system and how that ties into the language, the petroglyphs, and the way they designed buildings, and how all of that is meant to reflect yourself like a mirror so that you can grow on your own path through life. I think it's such a beautiful thing.
I like what you said about the quantum physics, because when I teach Navajo language, that's what I tell the students. I say our language is very, and our culture is very much quantum physics. Jonathan, I think his last name was Begay. He worked for Sandia National Laboratories here in Albuquerque. And I recall when I was in the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, I attended conferences, and I remember at one conference he spoke and he said that his first language was Navajo. So when he read physics, he had to translate it into Navajo for himself to really understand it. And then he would go home and he would talk to his grandfather and his grandmother about what he was learning. And so they would actually teach him, and they would say, you know, look at this sand painting, look at the sand painting, and they would break down the sand painting to him and the meaning of it and the energy that was going on in that sand painting. And some of these sand paintings are huge. They're almost like take up the whole hogan. And you know, the colors are made for different purposes and different plants. So black for one person might be made this way, but for another patient, they might use a different color black made from different materials. So he actually took the information that he learned from them, and he went back to Sandia National Laboratories and he applied it to the research that he was doing with laser technology and with physics. And so he learned and he brought that back. So I think it's really cool because it's in our language and culture, but it's also even in the manifestation of things and our prayers. So for example, when you say, um, before me it will be beautiful. Behind me it will be beautiful. Below me it will be beautiful. Above me it will be beautiful. All around me it will be beautiful. So it will be beautiful from my mouth, the words that I speak. So you're saying it and you're manifesting it and you're saying it is, it's becoming like that. So that's the translation of it. It is becoming.
You almost made me cry, Colleen. You keep talking for a minute.
It's
That was
also
really cool.
because even like with the mountain prayers that were created because of the twins, the So even the mountain way prayers that were created because of the experience of the twins, the deity, the hero twins that the Navajos have, that we have in our culture and our stories. Their father was the sun bearer. And so when they killed all these monsters that were killing the people with the help of weapons that were given by their father, when they returned those weapons, you know, he had a test for them and it was identifying where they were. And the two twins were named Twabajishchin and Nayet Nezgan, which is child born for water and monster slayer. So when they went to war, Monster Slayer was actually the one who did the killing. Twabajishchin, child born for water, he was more like he did coup. And so they would let their hair down because when you're in war, you do things, you know, your hair is not up in your little medicine bundle. Your tiye is your little medicine bundle. So they let their hair down when they went to war. And so Monster Slayer, he couldn't remember these places. He couldn't remember all the places that they had grown up and Monster Slayer couldn't remember all the places that they had been to when they were growing up. And so his brother sang different songs to him, and those became the Mountain Way songs. And some of those Mountain Way songs, when you sing them, you're saying, I put the sacred mountains' feet upon my feet. I put their legs upon my legs. I put their torso upon my torso. I put their mind upon my mind. I put their plume on me. And then I am that mountain. And you go through the mountains, the sacred mountains, and their entities. And you go through the holy people, the deities that are like our angels. And you say all those songs. And so when you're done, you dress yourself up as those sacred entities. And then that's who you are. It's like it's almost like when initiation, you look through a mask and you look through the world through their eyes. And so when you say those prayers, you have manifested them and you have put them on, and you're dressed up as a holy person, and so you're powerful. And so that's why at the end of a prayer, your words from your mouth must be beautiful, because you can hurt someone with your words. You can hurt someone with your thoughts. A single word in Navajo language can kill if you know how to do that. So you have to be very careful. And so you have to be in balance. You can't be, always too angry or too this way or that way. Can't always work too hard. You can't always play too hard. There's a balance. It's almost like, in some ways, it's a lot like Buddhism, the middle path. And that's the Navajo philosophy, is walking in balance. Quantum physics. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. It's the same thing. I just read a quote, and I'm not going to misquote it, from Nikola Tesla, where he talks about how if we understood like the mechanics of human thought, of just even the thoughts and emotions within ourselves, that we would understand like the movements of the planets and could affect things. And like it's all present. What's so amazing is that it goes clear back into the teachings and the culture that come from just connecting directly to the earth and to the environment, and using stones and using music and words and song, these basic things. Whereas now we're trying to capture all of these secrets using technology. These things were all done with like forms of meditation and ritual and belief systems and stuff. And I think it's amazing that you feel like you've grown up and you're still learning all of this stuff, but here you are, you have a whole classroom. So if you were going to, like, if someone was going to come into your classroom or join the Patreon workshop to start learning things, where would you tell someone like me to start? Or like, how would we even get a clue to begin learning some of the things that you know and how it applies to us?
Well, we always start off with self-identity, and who your family members are. Because remember, I said earlier, our language was allowed, we were allowed to keep our language because we said we would use it to maintain a relationship with our brothers and sisters, which includes the plants and the animals. So understanding your identity, who your family is, your mom and your dad, your brothers and your sisters, um, and learning the names for things like that, and creating that family tree. That's all part of like establishing that identity, and then kind of going out from there and understanding our relationship with the world. So in different ways, and exploring that. So that's why it's a year-long class that I'm teaching.
Right.
It takes time.
Right. So we've talked about like how the language corresponds like with the calendars, and how these calendars are like timing systems, and that's kind of critical to a lot of the conversations that we have too. These calendars also line up with maps and things. It's kind of amazing. So I'm really interested to have you kind of touch on that today too.
Okay. Let's see. I have something way over there, but I'm gonna show this first.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the 260-day calendar, and let me see if I can bring it up on the Promethean board, and I'll turn the monitor over this way to see
Cool.
if I can get it up. I think it's that one. Let's see if it'll flip over. Ah, cool. It worked. Let's see. Oh, this way.
I'm going to try to see if I can.
I might have to put this up a little bit. There we go.
And I'm gonna remove myself from the screen and just pop
Okay.
in if I have a comment. That way everyone can see everything more clearly.
Okay, can you do it? Can you see? Whoops.
Uh-huh.
Can you see it? Okay, good. All right, I'll do the best that I can. I probably should try and bring this up a little bit higher. I might just hold it. Okay, so here is, that might be a little distracting though, so there is a 260-day calendar. So
It looks great. I think it looks great. Go for it.
Okay, so there are 20 named days, and this calendar Roger put together. He put the glyphs together, and these are the 20 named days, and these are the glyphs. He translated them into English so that way it would be easier for use. And so we have alligator, wind, house, lizard, serpent, death, deer, rabbit, water, dog, monkey, herb, reed, jaguar, eagle, condor, movement, flint, rain, flower. So those are the 20-day names. They're named days. The different tribes, different peoples would use their own language and assign different day names. He went with the Aztec one and translated it. And then, so this is not just a Uto Aztecan calendar, by the way. This is a calendar that was shared by all the peoples of the Americas and used in different ways. So you start at 1 way up here. This is the first column in the 260-day calendar. There are 13 columns, so if you count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 columns, or 13 times 20 equals 260. That's why it's called a 260-day calendar. So you start at the top. The first day is 1 alligator. The second day would be 2 wind, 3 house, 4 lizard, 5 serpent, 6 death, 7 deer, 8, and so on. It continues all the way down to 13, so 13 reed, and then it'll start over again at 1 jaguar. And then when you get to the bottom, where it says 7 flower, then you continue up at the top of the second column. There at 8 alligator, and you just continue through the calendar 1 day at a time until you get to the very end of the calendar, at which point you'll have done 260 days. Cool, you have that. Let me see what else. Each day is associated with a cardinal direction. So you can see that alligator is associated with the east direction. Wind is associated with the north direction. House is associated with west, and lizard is associated with south. And that pattern repeats. East, north, west, south. So most people might think, especially natives, how come it's not going clockwise? It's a star calendar, so it's actually going the other direction. And Roger has shown how you actually take the zodiac or the Zia calendar, which is directional, and you can raise it and put it up in the air and look at it like that. And so when you do that, it becomes you can see the directions. Can you hold on just a second? Someone's at my classroom
Yeah,
door.
no problem. In fact, Roger, I'm going to surprise you here. Do you have your microphone on?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, tilt your camera up just a little bit so it's more on your face instead of your keyboard there. There you go. There you go. Roger just popped in the background and sent me this whole map. So
yeah, I was listening in and I realized that she was talking good, but needed a little more better example to show, and that's why I just stepped in real quick and said I sent you to your Facebook Messenger, so that way I mean she's explaining it good. There's no problem about that, but you need to see it clearly to really understand the layout.
yeah, I appreciate that. So here's the calendar system. If you haven't, those of you that are listening or watching this interview now, make sure and go back and check with the interviews that we've done before with Roger and Colleen, and you'll get more up to speed. And Colleen's back too. So we got Roger here as well. But so that's cool. We're about 40 minutes into the interview. Let's just go, and as long as you guys have, I'm available.
This 26 number on this thing with the 26 number is an exact relationship to the last presentation I did with the 26 number that is used divided by 16, the Z symbol. So if you coordinate this means this is dealing with what's going on a celestial level, and the other one is a terrestrial level globe. And then between the two, you could correlate, your coordinations between the heavens and the earth down here, and figure out where the heck you're going. Okay, That's what I wanted to say.
All right. Go. Yeah, let's get. Should we have Colleen continue? Let's let her keep going here. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. Let's see. So we have the 260-day calendar. Oh, so now we can actually go through and you can extrapolate the year count calendar from the 260-day calendar. And so how you would do that, I'm glad you have the screen up, but I'll go ahead and point. It might be hard to, I don't know if you can see this. I'll try to get this. I moved things, sorry.
You're good.
There. All right. So we will start at one read. So if you look at the calendar and you go down, you start at the top: alligator, wind, house, lizard, serpent, death, deer, rabbit, water dog, monkey, herb, reed. There's reed. And you move over right here, there's the number 1. That is where once every 52 years and 13 days, there's an alignment, I guess, of the Pleiades, Venus, and Earth. So the Pleiades will set at sunset. I'm sorry. The Venus will set as the evening star as the Pleiades rises, and then in the middle of the night, when it reaches its zenith point, Venus is in the underworld, and then in the morning, Venus rises as the morning star while the Pleiades sets. And so that is the marker for the new year, which is one read. And that year one read occurs once every 52 years. So you could say that your birthday and your birth year, those occur once every 52 years and 13 days. So in the Gregorian calendar, normally we would account for leap day every 4 years. That quarter of a day times 4 years, then you have one extra leap day. In this system, you have a quarter of a day, you multiply it by 52 years, and you get 13 days. So at the end of 52 years, you observe 13 days that are unnamed. You observe them, and then after that, you have one read, and that star marker. This is why it's a star calendar. It's associated with the Pleiades. For the Diné people, we are at the Baskin. That is also when we say that our new year begins. And in Navajo, my cousin Roland, he said that it's when the Pleiades it's like an entity. Every day is considered an entity. And the Pleiades is like the eagle plume of the entity of that day. And so when the eagle plume is directly standing straight up at midnight, that's when the new year begins. So the year one read is when that happens, and the year and day one read. So Roger has actually mapped out the 52 year counts, also in English, and we have that over here. I'll explain to you how to extrapolate the years, but let me show you the year counts. So it's a little hard to see, but this is it. One read is over here, and then we continue through here, goes up to 13 read, and then it starts at one flint. Then you have another 13 years, and then you start. So here, this one here is 842 AD, and it goes all the way down. Up here in the year one house is 868 AD, and so it goes down to 13 house, and then it starts at one rabbit and it goes to 13 rabbit. This is 881 AD to 893. So from there, you start in your next column that's over here, your second cycle of this. This here is 13 heaven cycles. So you start the second cycle and you go through there, and then you start your third cycle and you go through 52 years. And so that's how you move through this calendar. This is the 13 heaven cycles. It says right here, 13 heaven cycles. And here we have 9 hell cycles. One read started in 1518, November 13 of 1518. So that was when Cortez arrived. He arrived in the year one read. So they thought he was Quetzalcoatl with the blonde hair and the blue eye thing. But there's a morning star, but there's also an evening star. So the hero twins represent the light and the dark side. So I have here, I don't know if you can see, I should probably put it on the left-hand side. You see all those glyphs? This is a glyph from the Codex Vaticanus. Let me see, I have it written down. This is the heavens, the earth, and the levels of the underworld as depicted in the Codex Vaticanus. So I reproduced this so I could do a mural that has this. So if you go to Nativo Lodge, you can actually see this. I don't have the original anymore because my vehicle was stolen with all my art. When I spent the night there, they gave us a free night when they showed the murals, all the murals. So that was really unfortunate.
So Colleen, are you saying that, like what's been mentioned in the previous interviews, that when Cortez came, that the calendar system was changed or hidden to protect these like quantum consciousness secrets? Or something happened to where now we've kind of lost how all of this works, and you're starting to recover this knowledge?
So the church burned everything, right? They burned a lot. They melted. They were gold hungry. The conquistadors were hungry for gold. I think there was like, Carlos told me he read a book the other day where he said it was like, just from one place alone, it was like 52 trillion pounds of gold, or I don't know, something just enormously crazy. I couldn't even wrap my mind around how much gold that was. And that was just from Peru, I believe. I don't remember the name of the book. So all this, not, you know, they didn't want us to coordinate, and they wanted excuses to dehumanize us, to say we were animals, and that the knowledge that we had was devil worship and evil, because they wanted an excuse to say that we weren't actually human. And in order to gain access to the wealth and the natural resources, they couldn't treat us as human beings. They couldn't have a reason to say we were actually people. So many books were burned. A lot of the knowledge that was in stone or in gold or whatever, just it was destroyed out of ignorance and also out of greed. So a lot of this was lost. But also, Montezuma changed time. So Roger pointed out that if you read the Codex Tellurianus Remensis, which is a really big book, I think you can buy it for $1,000. It's a reproduction of that codex. Down below, they have Spanish translations. At the back of the book, there's an index that translates it to English. So there's 1 year, about 15 years before Cortez arrived, when the year that we came into was the year one rabbit. And one rabbit was always a year of hardship. It was always a year of drought and infestation and things of that nature. So when that year came around, instead of tying the bundles for that year, he actually changed time, and he changed it to the year to read, which isn't just 1 day. It's actually here. That's 365 days later. So he threw time off. So there's a lot of people who don't realize that Montezuma actually changed time before Cortez even arrived. So I guess that would have been around 1505. That's about when that happens. So if you go into the Codex Tellurianus Remensis, you'll find one sentence that indicates that he changed time because that year was always hard. Roger and I have talked about it, and we talked about how one reed represents the morning star twin, two reed represents the evening star twin. So who was the light twin and the dark twin? So who did Montezuma correlate or align himself with? He aligned himself with the dark twin. It also didn't change what happened to him. He still died at the age of 52. You know, maybe he was trying to change time because he didn't, you know, he saw that maybe that might happen and he didn't want that to happen. But regardless, history happened. And let me see, I'm trying to take this thing out because it's kind of reflective, but I'll just try to show you. This glyph here, there are 13 heavens. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Those are actually 52 year cycles. Those are 13 52-year cycles. Then right here, which there's one for, this is like a dual one because it's for heaven, but it's also for the hell cycle or the cycle of the underworld. Roger and I just call it the hell cycle or the indigenous dark ages. That was when Cortez arrived. And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 cycles of the underworld. 9 hell cycles.
So there's 13 dimensions up and 9 down?
Yes. Of time.
Gotcha.
And so this,
and he adapted that and basically took an entire year off of the calendar to throw.
So it just threw time off. So some people might say, you know, their calendars might start at a different time. And I'm not saying they're wrong, you know, because there are different calendars too for like planting and things like that. But if they were sticking with Montezuma's timekeeping, they might also be off because of that.
Well, and when people take what we're talking about now and reference it back to what we were saying earlier about quantum entanglement and manifestation, and how all these systems work and integrate the human soul into reality and into the earth and Mother Nature, how changing this system and changing the calendar throws all of that off, so that your conquerors can't manipulate it or discover that, or they end up in a sort of like a dark ages period. But it seems like this change affected the whole world and everything, and the way that we see reality and all of that. It's really interesting.
Well, I think it's a cycle of like they're observations, scientific observations. I tell my students, as Indigenous people, we were actually scientists. We understood that if we observed animals, if they were sick, then they would treat themselves as animals, the creatures. And so Indigenous people would say, "Oh, what is that? You know, they're sick with this. You know, let's see, how does it affect us?" And so that's how we learned. I think when I was in 9th grade, there was some scientific journal. They were like, "Oh wow, scientists have discovered you can watch animals and find out healing medicine from watching animals." And I was like, wow.
Right.
Great. That's something nobody knew.
Right.
But of course, now everybody knows because it was published, and non-natives were given credit for that great understanding.
Right.
But so I think this here is the 9 hell cycles that Roger mapped out starting in 1518. And it goes all the way down here to 1569. That's the first cycle. The second cycle was 1570. And so there are 9 52-year cycles. The year 2012 is right here. And that is in the year 1 house. So that's where that is. We are actually in the year 11 read. It says 2022. However, in November of this year, that's when we go into 2023. That's when our new year starts, in November. 12 Flint is the year. And what's really interesting is also that 1492 is right here, and it also correlates to 1 house. So that is really interesting because Cortez arrived basically in the last 26 years before the end of this heaven cycle. And then we entered the hell cycle, the indigenous dark ages. So if you look at these glyphs, they're actually, if you start getting down into the hell cycles, those pictures are actually kind of like, they're not nice. They're pretty dark, I think, if you're looking at those bottom cycles. So each cycle of hell was worse than the cycle before, to the point where, as indigenous peoples, we don't even know who we are now. We have lost ourselves. Many of us have assimilated. We've lost our languages. We've lost our cultures, but we're still here. And Roger likes to say, according to the federal government, I am a figment of your imagination.
Right.
And, you know, he can tell you about that, how the federal government and why they extincted his tribe. That was basically out of revenge, because his people actually took the federal government to court and won in the Supreme Court during the 1800s. That was his grandfather. So how Congress got back at those Indians was the next year they extincted that tribe and made their reservation 1 square mile. So that, you know.
That's when they went and tried to put everybody in adoption programs and basically rounded kids up and took them out of schools and their homes and everything.
Yep. There was that definitely the boarding school era was happening around that time. So one of the reasons why New England is called New England, and is it Crimea, is called New Russia. I forget. One of the reasons, New Zealand, one of the reasons why they come up with the term new is if it's new, then guess what? There's no history. It's brand new. Everything has been wiped clean. So labeling something as new, such as in New England, is supporting the erasure of indigenous ancient history that existed there long before the Europeans arrived and turned it into New England or new this or that. There's other countries around the world that do the same thing. It's just the erasure of indigenous identity.
Right.
So so that's a little bit about the calendar.
So this calendar system not only affects the way that we interact with nature and reality, but it also hides and changes our ability to even find locations, because these were also maps, right?
Yes.
Or they overlaid with mapping systems.
So the Hawaiians, shout out to people in Maui and Lahaina. I hope you guys recover from what's going on, and sending prayers out to you. But the Hawaiians, their calendar and their navigation system is also directly related to the Pleiades. Their new year is also in November. Their whole, you can actually go to Hawaii and you can go to the, I want to say the planetarium. They were actually teaching about the navigation system, the ancient indigenous navigation system that they used. So because of colonization, all the different indigenous peoples of the Americas, we have like little bits and pieces of it. And so the Re-Indigenizing Minds project, the purpose and part of our goal is to bring this knowledge back. Roger says he was told, if you want to bring it back and bring it back to life, just get a bunch of Indians together and start talking about it. And then people start to remember their grandmother or their grandfather's story, and they bring it to life. And that act of talking about it, bringing life to it with your breath, you make it move again. You make your language and your culture move again. So hopefully this will reach people who will want to start talking about it. Maybe will reach out to us so that we can continue our research and start putting our knowledge together as indigenous peoples, because we had the Uto-Aztecans, the Athabascans, which goes all the way up to Canada from here and even into Russia. And then there were also the mound cultures. They have that serpent mound in Ohio. So there's also the cultures on the East Coast. So all these cultures, we all have this knowledge. We just have to come together to put it back together again. And what's really neat about the 260-day calendar, I have this here. The 260-day calendar is really amazing. I have it here in a tubular form. If you're a 2D person, Flatlanders, yeah, just kidding. If you're a 2D person, you can look at it like this, and it's a cycle. When you get to the end of the cycle, you start over again. This is a family planning calendar. 260 days is the incubation period of a human child. So if you want your child to be born on, let's say, one movement, then guess what? Right around here, you're going to get busy. That's when you want to try and make your baby, right? So it's a family planning calendar. It's also a calendar that divides the year equally into 4 parts, 364 days. The 365th day is the first day of the new solar year. That's how we see this calendar. You can also see it 3-dimensionally like this. And so if you look at this, and I just basically, I covered up the day names that are right here. I rolled it into a tube. I taped it together so you could just see the numbers. And Roger has a better one. This one here, I just rolled up a printed one. So if you choose, you can choose any number. We'll choose 1. So we'll start here at the bottom. Whoops. Here's 1. As I turn the calendar, there's another 1. There's another 1. There's another 1. There's another 1. And you see that that number 1 is actually moving in a spiral around the calendar. So this calendar basically shows you that time is a spiral. That's kind of cool, right?
That's really cool. It's like to me, that's really important because in everything that I do, even when I go out on hikes and I find the medicine wheels or the ceremonial stone circles, they're like a Stonehenge thing, and they interface or reflect the movement of the Big Dipper around the North Star and all of the symbolism and everything that you're talking about. And then you hold up this amazing calendar system and spiral it just like you would a DNA helix, and suddenly you see this sacred geometry emerge in everything, in these customs and beliefs. Mm-hmm. And when people talk about Native Americans or indigenous people as being primitive, it's super insulting because your people and ancestors were understanding this phenomena and reality in a way that is mind-blowing to me, that I think our smartest people on the planet are just now trying to figure out. And they've known forever, and this has been part of this symbolism all the way in to, like you were saying, the words that come out of your mouth and everything that means. It's so profound to me that this is something you guys are uncovering again and restoring. It's very amazing to me.
So that's why it's important for people to learn their own languages too, to maintain and continue their indigenous languages, because some of the concepts are not directly translatable into English. So there are different ideas and concepts that different peoples have and how you can use it. But when they first arrived, and on that glyph, you saw the Roman numerals on the left-hand side. It went from 1 all the way up to 13, and then 1 all the way down to 9. That was actually a Western world-based paradigm being forced on an indigenous concept, because as indigenous people, we think in circles. So it's actually a cycle. So this strip, you could actually roll it up into a tube like a tire, right? And then it would be a cycle that goes like this, not going straight up to heaven, not going straight down to hell. So even in that ancient concept, people didn't understand it was such huge amounts of time that have been built into our architecture, our art, our ceremonies, our prayers. And it's hard to transfer that over to English, so a lot was lost just because of the denial of allowing us to speak our own language.
And just honestly, Colleen, I'll flat out say it, the pure, just flat out racism and cultural appropriation and everything, to where even when I go out and find ancient petroglyph sites, it's obvious that they've been defaced or stolen, or big chunks of them removed, because they would go up and see the symbolism and think that it was demonic under their own prejudice or interpretations, which were totally false. And so there's so much that was lost and moved and stolen and destroyed under this idea that it was evil or demonic or whatever. I think when the white man came and they saw these ceremonies, and like you're describing, dressing up as the deities and embodiment, becoming like an embodiment of all their power, and dressing up as the mountain and the animals, all the way to the feathered plumes relating to the stars in the sky. And somebody ignorant walking in on that with no understanding, they immediately just see it as like some savage primitive ritual that they need to get rid of, like it's some cannibalistic tribe doing this or that, and they have no understanding whatsoever. And so a lot of this created this cultural clash and all of the problems that we have. I really think it's beautiful that you guys are restoring it now, and we have this opportunity with the internet to share it with everybody and to bring it back, like to have it, you know, blossom and come to fruition now, and people can understand it in their own way. And you're saying that it's not about coming and just like adopting the Navajo language and all that, but understanding who you are and as a person, and where you come from, and connecting with that in the similar way too.
Yes. So what I do, because I on my Instagram, I do Indian time posts. Although I've been so busy, I kind of slacked off lately. But every post I do, I put today's date. And I remember I said that there's a cardinal direction associated with that day. So if it's an East day, in according to my culture, then that would be a good day to sort of set intentions, to imagine, to brainstorm, to sort of think about, visualize what is it that you want. If it's a South day, that's a day for making your bullet points, making your plan. If it's a West day, that's a good day for executing, taking action. And if it's a North day, that's a good day for reflection and evaluation on something that you might be working on. So that's how I apply it using my culture. Other people's have different cultural values associated with the cardinal direction. And so I tell people, look to your own culture to find that out, to understand that day. But also, even if you look at the numbers, numerology, 1 to 13, you can also kind of take that into consideration. So after a while, this actually becomes very much like a way to read the day. There are positive aspects and negative aspects to each day. So, for example, a monkey day might be lots of monkey business. There might be lots of entertaining stuff going on, but there might also, it'll make you laugh. But you also have to be careful, because the other side of that coin is, a monkey can rip your face off too. So you have
Right.
to be careful. Look both ways twice before you pull out into the road, because somebody might be having a bad monkey day. And what really adds to this is the fact that I have been paying attention to the solar flares since 2021, January of 2021.
Mm.
And the reason I did that was because I read a Russian scientist wrote that the sun issues a solar flare regularly every 13 days. So I was like, oh, wow, I want to see when this happens. So what I have found, just from paying attention, and you can pay attention yourself too, like start looking, going, Google the solar, there's like NASA, and then there's some others in Europe. You can check out the ones that kind of give the solar weather, check out what's going on. It takes a few days. The sun will issue a solar flare. We'll see it right away within 8 minutes, but it takes about 2 or 3 days for that to actually travel through space to arrive on Earth, and then the actual full energy of that solar flare to be felt. So you'll notice that actually the sun is issuing it around the beginning or the end of these days. So sometimes like a day that lands on 13 might be extra impactful. So if it's 13 monkey, like look both ways 2 or 3 times before you cross the road.
So like that might not be a good day to like form a business partnership with a new guy or something like
Yeah,
that. If it's
yeah,
like a
or
multiple
one
monkey
day,
day, right?
So like manifesting and like really powerful things happening at the end of the week and the beginning of the week might be powerful. The middle of the week's kind of more balanced, the middle of that 13-day cycle. So you have numerology, then you also have like the sun. Like this is actually like mapping the patterns of the sun. That's pretty amazing to me, just from observing when the sun's issuing its solar flares. So considering that, I've looked into the future regarding the pattern of the sun, because right now I believe we're in the 26th cycle of the sun.
Hmm.
So they're like, there's every 11 years, there's like these solar storms that like hang out for 11 years and then they die off. And then there's another solar storm that like comes in. And so that lives for like 11 years. So like we're in the 26th one right now. And so this solar cycle, according to NASA and these other European space agencies, the sun's energy is going to be increasing steadily through 2024. So guess what? You know what year that is? One rabbit. Oh, do I have the current? Oh, this is the wrong one.
So we're getting ready in 2024 to enter the missing year that Montezuma removed.
2024, 2025. Yep.
What?
So that was the year that Montezuma was like, this year is too hard. We need to change it so we can make life better. And guess what?
And we're getting ready to enter that. So we're going from the 25th into the 26th right now.
No. We're already in the 26th one. It fully came in I want to say January of 2022. What year are we? 2023? Yeah, January of 2022 was when the last one fully ended, because it was kind of lingering around a while, that solar storm, and then it finally disappeared. Now we're fully into this current solar cycle, but the sun's energy is still increasing. It's like going off the charts all the way through 2024, 2025, which I was looking at and I was like, oh my God, that's the year one rabbit. So,
wow.
And
that's fascinating, because this is, I mean, not to jump topics, but I mean, there's been several people, I know people that have come out of the CIA, and you don't know if it's propaganda or not, but they're talking like next year, before 2025 and all that, 2024, 2025, that there's going to be like a UFO invasion and all this stuff. But all this weird stuff is aligning up even with these calendars.
See all these years with circles? Roger circled those because he was paying attention to when there were UFO waves. So this particular one that Roger put together, he actually was also studying when there were waves of UFOs. And so there appears to be patterns when the UFOs come through. So that's what Roger noticed when he first made this calendar. I think Roger made it like 20 years ago. I don't know if he's online. You can ask him, because he and Tracy actually mapped about 10,000 years into the future and 10,000 years into the past.
What do you say, Roger? So you can kind of predict UFO waves with the count?
I can tell you from right now that here's the number with 13. It's back to that 13 again. 1952, there was a UFO wave over Washington, D.C. that, they wet their pants over. And you add 13 to that, 1965, there was a UFO wave over the U.S. Midwest. And you add 13 to that, it takes you to 1978. There was a UFO wave over Italy. You add 13 to that, it takes you to 1991. There was an eclipse of the sun, and the biggest UFO sighting in the history of the world happened over Mexico City during the eclipse of the sun. You add 13 to that, takes you to 2004, brings you to this thing called the USS Nimitz incident, which happened out there in the ocean. And you add 13 to that, it takes you to 2017, which is an actual recreation of the USS Nimitz all over again to the day.
Really?
2017. But then you add 13 to that, informal contact is in 2030.
2030.
And then
wow.
37, formal contact.
Do you think then, what's your thoughts on why they're saying in the next year or two, do you think they're going to try to fake stuff before the real thing?
They've been faking stuff all along, Carl.
That's true. They've been faking stuff the whole time. That's true.
Remember, it's his story, not ours. And when it's his story, it serves the colonial ploy. I mean, the colonial purpose. Same difference.
That's true.
I mean, it's all been a lie, and it continues to be a lie. That's how colonialism works. They're trying to erase us so that they can put what nonsense they want in our place, which is a drag because doing it, as you can tell, they're destroying time, which is destroying them being in balance with nature.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm really interested. I want to hear, like, Colleen, what your thoughts are. Um, can you talk about what you think is coming, if we can mention that just for a minute?
Oh, personally?
Yeah, what do you think is coming? I mean, we're talking about like the next couple of years here. What should we be doing, and what's coming?
Well, there's I think we're in the year 12 Flint. We're coming into the year 12 Flint in November. I believe it's November 3rd, to go double check. But that'll be when we come into the year 12 Flint, the day and the year. Flint is kind of like a year of sacrifice. So I'm thinking that might be a good year to like start saving money, setting aside, looking to the future, preparing. Then it's followed by the year 13 house. 13 house is kind of like a house, like take care of your business, take care of your house, take care of your shit, take care of your business. And, you know, just get your home, your house, everything in order, and prepare for things. And then we have one rabbit, which was the year of hardship. So, take that into consideration. One rabbit starts a 13-year cycle off. What's really interesting is that we have it starts off, the 52-year cycle starts off with one reed. That 13-year cycle ends with 13 reed.
Hmm.
The next 13-year cycle starts off one flint, and then ends on 13 flint. We're in the third quarter of 52 years. It started with one house in 2012, which correlated to 1492, and it's going to end in 13 house. And then the next cycle is one rabbit will end in 13 rabbits. So that's what's coming up. And then we enter the new cycle of time, which is the indigenous heaven cycle. So you could say it's an indigenous age of reasoning, when we return back to laws of Mother Earth, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, there's this huge trend that's happening, I think, globally and with youth. So the next world is going to be inherited by people of mixed races. That is part of our prophecies. In our prophecies, it's not going to be inherited by the white race, the yellow race, the red race, the black race, which is, even though that's politically incorrect, those terms these days, as Indigenous people, when we looked at races of people, that's how we refer to them in our languages.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to be, the Mother Earth is not going to be inherited by one race. It's going to be inherited by the mixed races. You can already see that. I believe that's also why the white supremacy movement is so intent on really bringing back, scaling back rights and encouraging or keeping white women in a state of being where they can have as many babies as possible, to propagate that, because they're afraid that their race will disappear. But when Columbus arrived, we couldn't stop that trend. We couldn't change time. It just happened. It was just a trend. It was kind of like if Martin Luther King never existed, the civil rights movement would still have occurred. It's because of that trend. If anyone here has ever read Isaac Asimov's trilogy, I would encourage anybody who hasn't read it, read Isaac Asimov's trilogy. It's really cool. It's about this scientist who like uses math and science to like predict like tens of thousands of years into the future based on trends. And so I kind of feel like this calendar system is the same thing. It's like an observation, but it's also a prediction, because time and patterns will repeat themselves. And so we have documented the past, and in doing so, we can also predict the future because we can see what's going to happen. And so I think when you really start to get into calendar work, you start to see the multiple dimensions of things and the patterns of things, and you start to see things from in a different perspective. That's why I like Re-Indigenizing Minds project. It's a paradigm shift. It's a shift from from man-made time to natural time. We're trying to teach people to come back into step with natural time, with the time of the universe, because the time that we're using right now, this man-made time, it's man-made. We're like the monkey that's out of beat, that's, clanging the chimes and beating the drums, but we're marching to our own beat, while Mother Nature, the universe, is actually in a different flow. I also want to show this particular pattern, which is really cool. Besides the spiral pattern, if you were to put this, and Roger's done this, I don't have it, but it's a transparency. Remember those old Elmos that you could throw a transparency on and see through?
Yeah.
If you were to put this on a transparency paper and you were to look through it instead of at it, then what you see, the spirals occurring, the different spirals, you actually see the double helix. So in this calendar is also the double helix.
So you do actually see, you can like poke a chopstick through it and make alignments go through, just like you would a genetic code then.
Yes, it's the same pattern. It's the DNA. So gosh, we haven't even gotten to the planetary calculations.
No, that's what I was going to say, because you're talking about that spiral of the DNA, but you're looking at a map that was based on the stars.
There are some planetary calculations that Roger did that are just out of this world, because basically what he did was what I just showed you, the year counts, that is the year count for Earth. You can extrapolate year counts for every single planet.
For Mars and for
Venus, Mercury. Yeah. Roger already did it. And when he did it, what he found was that they also occur in the same pattern. So what I mean is 1, 2, the names were different, but the numbers were the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It just went like that. And so that's what he found when he mapped out all the different planets.
And not only do these maps and calendars line up on the earthly scale to discover artifacts, but is it lining up to reveal where there could be artifacts and things on other planets too?
Oh, you're talking about the global mapping using the Zia symbol.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's
a whole other conversation.
A whole other topic.
Right. I just wanted to get your reaction.
Raj just shared some stuff with me this morning, and I was like, I can't explain this. I have no idea what this is. I can bring it up and let Roger explain it, but that has to do with global mapping. And I'm just trying to focus on the calendar here, but it is tied to global mapping. Just because of the Pleiades, because the Hawaiians, they're, like I said, their time starts and is associated with Pleiades. Their New Year is the same as Diné culture, the same as the 260-day calendar. It's based on the Pleiades, and their global mappings, or how they navigate the world, is based on that. And so my mom said that when she was little, she was always told, if you know the stars, you will never be lost, because you know the stars. As above, so below. So
that's what my tattoo on my elbow means. Oh. And believe it or not, that's a Viking symbol. So yeah, it means the same thing. That's cool.
Cool. Yeah. So you know what? There was one thing I forgot to do. I forgot to show you guys how to extrapolate the year count calendar from the 260-day calendar. Would you like to see that now, or I could do that?
Here's what I think we should do, Colleen. At this point, we're like an hour and a half in. I think we've blown everybody's minds. And I think doing that for a Patreon video would be a good opportunity for people to click the link down in the description below when they're watching this. If you want to see these maps, if you want to see how they line up, if you want to learn the system and get it directly from Colleen and Roger and begin to develop it, all of that's going to be there where you can print it out and look for yourself and even know how to use it in your meditations and when you are developing your own life and stuff in your own way. So I really want to recommend everybody to go to the Patreon page and to subscribe to the YouTube channel and all that with the Re-Indigenizing Minds project so that you can start to learn. So I think that's what you should do. Is we could go on and on for a whole nother hour, but I think we should.
I do have a video. I need to upload it. I'm sorry. I'm so busy. I'm a mom. I'm teaching Navajo language. I'm the Navajo language practicum coordinator, and school just started, and I've been juggling a million things, and drove home to my mom and to help drop my son off so that he could help with my mom. Oh, there's a ghost story in there too, if you want to hear that.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I've been really busy, so I apologize for not helping with posting to Patreon as often as I want to, and for finishing some of these. We just need more people. We need people who want to be part of the Re-Indigenizing Minds project.
Right.
And to meet up with Roger, I think if you can in person or like this, over Messenger or Facebook, set up a meeting, or maybe you could coordinate a meeting for people to come in and sort of have a conference talk with Roger to ask questions. I think there's a lot of things that can happen, and there's not enough of me and Roger. We need people to be part of this.
Yeah.
So please reach out to us, or maybe to Carl, and let's figure out how we can, move forward to expand the research. Because there's so much, and if you're artistic, if you're scientific, there's so much. We need nerds of all kinds.
Yes, and people to help with the website stuff, and even like what I do, to look at the maps and things, and then to actually hike out and go see if there's things there, and to document it and to do that appropriately. It's such a cool project, Colleen. It's such an amazing thing that you're doing, and rediscovering all of this with Roger, but also communicating it and translating it in such a way to where it's tangible and understandable to people. Anybody who's into sacred geometry or into meditating or ancient Buddhism or whatever, you're going to find amazing correlations to all of this work. And when you go over to the Patreon and you start to get involved in it or start to help with it, it is going to impact your life, and it will help you sort out those alignments both inside and outside, and help you see yourself in new ways. And it's an amazing thing. I highly recommend it. I feel like I accidentally stumbled on this path, sort of trying to sort out my own trauma and life issues and things like that I was going through. But it's been tremendously validating and such an awesome experience to become your friend, Colleen, and with Roger, and to learn all of this. And it's changed my life. So any chance that we get to spread this message and to get other people involved, to get other people on the Patreon, I really want to encourage that. Please go join and help. Because if you want to volunteer, just ask Colleen how you can do it. And there's plenty to do, whether it be helping edit videos together or clips and all of that. There's a lot that could be done.
And it's called the Re-Indigenizing Minds project. It's not called the Decolonizing project.
Right.
I feel like the term decolonize is just a reaction to colonization. And so you're not really being guided inside or by your spirit when you're doing that. You're just reacting, kind of like how the I don't remember what they're called, people who are against everything. I don't know if it's nihilists or anarchists.
Anarchists, yeah.
Anarchists, like, they're just anti-society. They're anti-whatever's out there. So they actually need that whatever's out there to react to, right? So I feel like The term decolonization is like that. You need the colonizer to react to. The term re-indigenizing is about coming back within. It's refocusing and recentering on your roots to Mother Earth, to re-indigenizing your mind, to remembering who you are as a human being, and that your brothers and sisters are the plants and animals of this world, the water, the natural elements, the mountains. They are all entities, the clouds, and it's a paradigm shift. And realigning to natural time is part of that. You start to see things from a different perspective. And so it's, in a way, it is decolonizing, but it's more about, I mean, because you're kind of letting the linear thought go. You're starting to think in circles. You're starting to think holistically. You're starting to think of things from quantum physics mindset, the way that Dene think of things from a quantum physics mindset. So again, it's a paradigm shift, and it's for everyone, because we are all children of Mother Earth. And this world is going to go to our children who are of mixed races. So we have to remember that and think 7 generations ahead. What are we going to do now to prepare for our children whom we love, for our grandchildren, and for all our descendants who we should send off with love, and who, because I know I remember my grandmother with love, and I make prayers. I remember my great grandmother, and I give thanks to all those who are before us, and I give thanks for all those who come after me. So right now, this is where we are. We're here and now in time, but all other times as well, how can we make the world and the universe a better place? And that, that starts from coming back to our heart and our soul. So,
Colleen, do you think you can give us some parting words and say goodbye in your special Navajo language?
Sure. Hagone. That's how you say goodbye until you come again. I will see you later.
Well, thank you, Colleen. I appreciate you so much, and we'll see you guys in the next one.